coming out for our last talk of the 2026 Expo. I would like to introduce to you our speaker today, Mr. Larry Stewart, back there. Larry's mother and his grandmother were both avid gardeners, but as a child, most of his involvement was limited to pulling weeds. Therefore, Larry didn't like gardening, and he still doesn't like working in the garden unless it's to help his wife, Shirley, to install an irrigation system, put up trellises, or build a fence around the garden. So while Shirley plays in the garden, Larry plays handball, pickleball, and serves as the public affairs officer in the local Civil Air Patrol squadron. But he did marry a gardener, and he loves what gardeners do. And in getting to know his wife's master gardener friends, he decided he wanted to support the great work that they do. So in 2021, the year he retired from his career in the insurance industry, Larry became a master gardener, and since then, his primary focus has been on helping new master gardeners get trained and plugged into the Hamilton County Master Gardener Program. Last year, the president of the Master Gardeners of Hamilton County, who happened to be his wife, asked Larry to start up a residential lawn team, and in the process of seeking research-based material, he studied and completed the Certified Lawn Care Professional Program offered by the University of Tennessee. Using what he learned in that program, he's put together the presentation you'll see today. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. Welcome. I want to start by saying that this is a little shout out to the group that I taught last month at the third Saturday class. We had intended to tape it so we could put it on our YouTube channel. I set up the camera, we had the slide projector all set up, I had the microphone, everything was fine. Great questions. We had an hour and 45-minute format so we could do as much as we wanted. And then afterwards I said goodbye to everybody, went over. I did not press the record button. And they don't know yet that it was my mess up, but they'll watch this on the YouTube channel and find out that I had a plan B. So this is plan B. Now, we don't have an hour and 45 minutes today. We have about 45 minutes. So you're going to get the same information they got, minus a lot of the questions and fluffy stuff. But there is a question and answer period at the end. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to go through the material, and then we'll spend what's left over for questions and answers. Everybody good with that? Does anybody have one pressing question they've got to get an answer to before they leave today? Okay, good. So you're just open minds, ready for a wealth of information. First of all, I'm not alone in this. We have a couple other members. Tim Parsons and Sherry Holler are part of our residential lawn team. And this started with the question why. Shirley asked me, well, she kind of told me, no, she asked me that I was to start a residential lawn team. And so I kind of wondered, what do we need and what information is out there? And so where do you go for good information? The first place I went was at the Ag Center. The Ag Center has an office on the third floor, and we often use the facilities on the bottom floor. So I went up to the top floor, and they've got this information stack. And I looked through this side, there wasn't anything on lawns. And so I turned the pivot, and the other side, all four sides, there's not a single thing about lawns there. So I thought, well, you don't go to the Ag Center for information on lawns, apparently. We've got some great nurseries, I'll go there. So I went to our big nursery vendor in town, and they had all this information up for display. At the time, there wasn't anybody behind the counter. I got this picture afterwards. So I looked through that for information on lawns and didn't find anything. So I asked somebody at the cashier, I said, where do you find the books where I'll find information? Anybody remember you could walk it? Well, so I said, where are the books where I can find information on lawns? She said, well, if you go back there, turn right, and a little further back, you'll find a display. And so I looked through there. There's lots of kids' books and stuff like that, but nothing on lawns. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go to the big box store. Do you remember we used to be able to go to a big box store and see a whole rack, maybe 12 or 16 feet long, how to build new shelf space, how to build a patio, how, you know, all that stuff? It's not there anymore. At least I couldn't find it. I found this. So I went and asked at the customer service counter. I said, so where can I find all the information on gardening and lawns? And they said, well, try that end cap over there. And so I did, and I found those books. And the closest thing I could find was a farmer's almanac. And so I thought, okay, that's 3 strikes now. I'll try one more. I'll go to the bookstore. And so I went to the bookstore, and sure enough, I found the lawn garden department, a home and garden department, and I found a section on grass, and that was great. And so we focused in a little bit more, and that wasn't exactly what I had in mind. I'm seeing titles like marijuana horticulture, growing weed in your garden. That wasn't exactly what I was looking for grass. So what are you going to do? So I went online, and we, as Master Gardeners, we are an extension of the University of Tennessee, and they offer research-based, scientific, evidence-based information for all types of gardening, including now a newer certified lawn care professional. I've got to apologize first. They put on my ticket here and announced over the air that I'm a lawn care professional. I am not. I've taken the lawn care professional course. There's a big difference between the two. But based on that information, I put together this presentation, and I have a certificate to prove that I finished. And I want to acknowledge three people. First, Dr. Becky Bowling. She is the grass master in Tennessee, works out of UT Knoxville. And she worked on this along with Michelle Moat up in Rutherford County. And then finally, Haley Treadwell, our ag agent for Hamilton County. You've probably seen her walking around here. People who know her love her. And they all helped with this. And so nobody stands up here alone. Now, we'll ask some questions. Why do you want a lawn? Well, it looks nice. It's great for fun activities. Some people say it's good for conservation. We'll look at that. But the benefits do include erosion control, runoff mitigation, and creates a visual and environmental bridge between the natural environment and man-made structures like houses and fences and so forth. And but some people will still challenge a lawn and say, is it environmentally friendly? It can strain water resources. In fact, if you go to California, last stat I heard was that 2/3 of their water doesn't go to people, it goes to keeping the lawns green. That's a lot of water in a desert state. And the chemicals used on lawns can pollute the waterways, and gas-powered lawnmowers aren't really environmentally friendly. So it's not perfect, but it does help with some things like controlling rainwater runoff and allows that water to perk into the underground. And it's important for other forms of life like children and adults that like to play on the lawn and so forth. So it has some good benefits too. It can create, depending on the structure of your lawn or grassy area, it can be a pollinator garden. I'll confess right now that we don't have one of these lawns that True Green has come out and sprayed once a month and made sure that it's green all year round. We have more of a pollinator garden. When it's clover season, we don't mow. We let those things bloom and watch all the activity that's happening in the front yard. It also helps with temperature regulation, and it can be a good safe place for kids to be able to have fun. But when we talk about putting in grass or maintaining grass, we're going to talk a little bit about species. And generally, we're going to divide it into two categories. Anybody want to take a shot at what the two categories are?
Warm season and cool season.
Yes, thank you very much. Warm season and cool season grasses are how we divide the family. And the warm season grasses tolerate heat really well. They do pretty well in drought. They don't like shade so much, and they don't like the cold weather. On the other hand, the cool season grasses are great with the cool temperatures, but not, and pretty good with shade, but they don't do well with the heat or the drought. So which one do we want? Well, first of all, let's look at what thrives in the U.S. Up in the north, we have the cool and humid or cool and arid space that is great for the cool season grasses. And along the southern belt, we have the climates that are perfect for warm season grasses. And we are in what is called the transition zone. And that has a very specific definition. And what it means is that we can grow both warm season grass and cool season grass equally poorly. So it's an impossible situation. People struggle with it. When I was still studying this, somebody says, so what do I need to do to be able to have a good looking lawn? And I says, you need to make one change. And that would be your zip code. So which turf is right for me? Well, in this area, the ones that handle that transition zone the best are mostly the tall fescue or the Bermuda grass or zoysia grass. And there are a couple others that I hear, and somebody's going to say, well, centipede grass does pretty well, or St. Augustine sometimes survives in some situations here. And some people will say, well, I can get bluegrass to grow, and in the shade areas it does, but it's hard to find one grass that just does well everywhere. And if you go to the lawn professionals, they will often wind up doing a blend. They will put both in your lawn and kill one at one time of year and then and feed the other and vice versa. Just as a matter of doing their best to keep your lawn looking pretty all year round. But it usually takes supportive chemicals and techniques and work. So which grass is right for me? There are a couple sources, and if you're interested in that topic, you might want to take a picture of this slide. These two sources, the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance and the Alliance for Low Input Sustainable Turf, put out information that can be very useful in your selection of grasses. But probably as important, maybe more important than that, is to go to your local professional nursery and ask them what do they have access to, especially what do they have access to in the way of sod. Because what's available in sod is what's actually growing here, and that's what's going to thrive best in your area. Does that make sense? All right. First question you should ask, what kind of soil do you have? How many people have heard the recommendation for a soil test anywhere during this weekend? Yeah, it's something we talk about a lot. In fact, I got a chance to go to one of these two-day forums for lawns. It was put on for the real lawn professionals. Caleb here is a lawn professional. And they attend so they can get credits for their pesticide licenses and various continuing education. And one thing that was talked about over and over again is the importance of getting a soil test. And you want to do that before you plant your lawn. So we're going to talk just a moment about that. If you go to this website, again, another picture you might want is soillab.tennessee.edu. This is their opening webpage when you click on that. And when you do, you will see this little square that says Soil Testing Options. You want to click on that and then click on Lawn and Garden. There, you will find a video that tells you how to get a sample of your lawn. And they'll talk about a couple different methods. They'll tell you that if you get a soil probe, it's a round tube you stick into the ground. You can pull up the top 6 or 8 inches of your soil and do that in several places in your area and mix that all together and then send in a baggie's worth of soil to them. They will analyze it. If you don't have a soil probe, they'll show you also how to do it with a regular shovel. Just stick your spade in and lop off the sides and you wind up with that same 1 inch by 1 inch center that you want for your soil. And then fill out the online submission sheet. You can pay your $15 right online. They'll give you a registration number. You attach that to your baggie or a little box if you got one of the provided boxes, but it doesn't have to be in the box. Now send in your soil, and a couple weeks later you will get back an email letting you know that your results are ready and a link that you can pull up. It's a perfect way to find out what kind of soil you have, if its pH level is acidic or alkaline. It'll also tell you specifically what you need for what you want to grow. So knowing that that's going to happen on the back end, you want to tell them what you're doing this test for. Are you asking for a lawn, and which type? Are you asking maybe the same area you want a lawn, you also want to grow some rhododendrons and you want some carrots along the back. If that's the case, write all 3 of those things down on your soil test. They're doing the test once, but they can give you recommendations for amendments for all 3 different categories because they're going to be different. So you can get all that from one soil test. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. Next, if you're putting in a lawn, we'll cover this briefly. There's some steps and you want to get them in the right order. You certainly don't want to put the irrigation in before you rototill the ground. So we're going to level the ground first, remove obstacles. Anything bigger than your fist needs to come out for sure. You'll work in your amendments as a result of your soil test. You'll install the irrigation system at that point if you want to. And then you're going to work in some compost into those top few inches to help the soil be able to hold moisture and be more conductive for growing some nice lawn. Compost materials, they do help enhance the soil health and reduce compaction and help retain moisture. And getting the moisture and keeping the moisture in the soil is really important for a healthy root system, which is really important for a healthy lawn. Those compost materials should be worked into the top 6 or 8 inches because that's the growth area for your lawn if it's healthy. If you don't want a healthy lawn, you only need to work this in for the top inch or 2. But we want deep roots. By the way, the compost can also be used for a top dressing. One of the things that isn't talked about much here is the need to do core, help me with the word.
Core aeration.
Thank you, aeration on your lawns. And a couple times a year is good. 3 times a year I've heard recommended is the best. And it means investing in one because if you go rent the one from Home Depot each time it starts getting big, they get to know you by name. And so when you pull out those cores of soil, filling that with compost will help enrich that soil, keeps the oxygen flowing in, and is overall good for your whole lawn.
What's
Yeah.
the depth that you need to plug?
6 to 8 inches, because that's the zone you're really focused on. Yep. And so you don't need going deeper than that, but you don't want to get just what's at the top either. If you do just the top, you're going to get an unfair reading of what your roots are really going to be growing into. I should also mention that soil test, when you get it back, it's going to make recommendations for nutrients, but it is not going to give you any recommendations for nitrogen. Anybody know why they don't give any recommendations for nitrogen? Caleb?
That's a good question.
Okay, thank you. Because nitrogen is short-lived, needs to be applied on a regular basis, and it varies depending on your situation. But they just know that that's something you're going to need to do, so they don't give you any recommendations for that. Okay? Now, if you're going to grow lawn other than, well, there's different sources. You can grow it from seed, you can lay sod, and you can plug it. And different types of lawns are better suited for some of those than others. They recommend that you use fertilizer according to the directions and that you apply it during the active growing season. So we'll look at that. New lawns need smaller amounts, more often, and at lower rates than established lawns. And mature lawns, and they're talking very mature lawns, 20 or 25 years or more, usually require a lot less nitrogen and other nutrients than newer lawn. Once they get established, they don't need as much. When you're fertilizing, if you don't mind, be kind to our environment. Try to avoid putting the fertilizer on the sidewalks, and if you do use a granule and they bounce all over the place, if you can sweep those back up onto the lawn, well, they'll do some good and they won't go into the creek. We're trying to keep that stuff out of the waterways, so that'll help us. Whoops. Mulching your lawn with a mulching lawnmower. I'm curious, do you use mulching lawnmower when you're servicing lawns?
We do, yes, sir.
Okay. So how many people use a mulching lawnmower? Yeah, we do too. But we didn't always. And there's some misunderstandings about mulching. Some people think that just using a regular lawn mowing and just not raking it up afterwards or not bagging it is the same as mulching. But the mulching lawnmower is actually, the blade is designed differently. The outer edge cuts the lawn, brings it up into the housing, and is designed aerodynamically to force it back down towards the center where there's another set of blades facing the other way. So one cuts it off and one beats it up and pulverizes it and drives it down into the lawn. And that goes back down in and creates more nitrogen for your lawn. So it's a good way to be able to supplement the nitrogen your lawn needs for a nice green lawn. And let's see, how long should you cut your lawn? There is a very common answer to this, and you probably already know, but most people say as short as I can so that I don't have to mow very often. And it makes sense, but it is not what you want to do. And here's why. We'll look at 3 different examples. The first example over there on your left is a lawn that represents a lawn that is mowed rather short, and its root system is approximately equal in depth to the height of the grass blades. The one in the middle is a little longer, and the one on the far right, those longer blades, tend to drive the roots down further. And so we want the roots to be able to go down deep. That's where the nutrients are, and that's where the moisture is going to be long-term, so that your grass isn't just dependent on how dry the top couple inches of soil is. You want those roots to go down. So you want to cut it longer. And how often? Rule of thumb, well, we already talked about that, okay. So scalping, when we moved into our house, the previous owner had a zoysia lawn out there in pretty good shape. But they also decided that during the wintertime, the thing to do was to scalp it. And they took it right down. I mean, there was dirt with a little bit of nub showing above it. Not the right way to treat your lawn. It's a shock to the grass itself. It makes, being a shock, it is not as resistant to disease, and that can cause problems with stress too. And a good rule of thumb is, first of all, the length of the grass is going to depend on the type of lawn and the season. But in general, let's say you decide that 4 inches, let's say 3 inches, because it's a good number to use for this. If you want 3 inches and you've got 5 inches, don't cut it down to 3 all at once, because you're going to be taking too much off and it's too much of a stress for your plant. So never remove more than 1/3 of the length of the grass at a time. Now, if you happen to be in a heavy growing season and you know it's going to go from 3 to 5 again really quick, you may be mowing a little more often during that season, but never take off more than 1/3 at a time, and then wait about 3 days before you mow again, if that's the case. So there it is. If it's 3 inches and you can cut 1 inch off of that and be fine. But if it's 2 inches, don't cut off more than 2/3 of an inch, or you're getting into the area where you're going to be shocking your lawn. And you may have to mow a couple times a week if necessary. But remember, don't take off more than 1/3 at a time. More considerations. In the early season, you can mow it shorter, but when it starts, this is especially true for the cooler season grasses, let it grow a little bit longer during the heat. It'll help keep the soil temperatures a little cooler and your grass will be a little healthier. But that's a little tricky too, because if the grass gets too long, then you don't get any air movement through there, and now you build up a situation where you can get fungus growing in there. So it's a delicate balance, and you have to kind of pay attention. Cool season grasses, 3 to 5 inches in the heat, and warm season grasses, 2 to 3 inches in the heat. Okay. The deeper the roots, the cooler the soil, and the fewer the weeds. That scalping of the lawn, then when it gets warm and you get the April rains and a little warmth, the weeds are loving it, and that's a good way to start your weeds off early. So how much to water and how often? The two different examples here, one has a relatively shallow root structure, one has a deep root structure. One got watered 3 times a week, one got watered once a week. You're better off doing all your watering 1 day a week if you can do that. And that means that the roots have to go deeper to find the moisture instead of just always trusting that the top inch is going to be wet. Does that make sense? If you have a situation where maybe you have a little bit of a slope, and if you water your full inch of water all at one time and it starts to run off onto the sidewalk or the street, then you could break that up into a couple times. But the best time to do your watering is between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. That means that you're watering at a cool time of the day, and the moisture above ground has a chance to evaporate, so that you don't wind up with a long-term moisture problem. If you mow late in the afternoon and it's still moist in the evening, now you've got all night for that moisture to sit there, and that's asking for problems with fungus. And about 1 inch a week, depending on your lawn, should be adjusted for rainfall. So if you already got a ½ inch of rain this week, you could just supplement that with another ½ inch. And early in the season, there's a strategy of torturing your lawn a little bit. And that just means, even though you think it's time to water, maybe holding off a little bit until you start to see the grass stressed a little, maybe limp a little. And at that point, it's going to have to start pushing its roots down to find more moisture. And that can actually help develop your root system in the early part of the season. So in the morning between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m., and please don't send more water down the creek that we have to. And you can cycle 2 to 4 times within a 30 to 40 minute rest to be able to accomplish your full watering without having the runoff. And we talked about that. Okay. Healthy roots equals a healthy lawn. You get better resistance to drought and disease. It's good for your getting nutrients. Increases the stress resistance of your lawns. You get fewer weeds, and you don't have to mow as often. That sounds like a good lawn? So where can you get for more information or more specific information? A good source of that is the University of Tennessee Extension. And there you can find data, but you can also find the Master Gardener program. And I became a Master Gardener, as the introduction said. I don't really like getting down on my hands and knees. I've never liked gardening, but I do appreciate gardens. And I will go to different gardens with my wife and find a lot and learn a lot. And I appreciate gardens. And frankly, I appreciate what gardeners do, whether you're a Master Gardener or not. But the Master Gardeners, I originally thought it was just a bunch of people who liked gardening. And I found out that they were actually an educational organization. And Shirley started with Master Gardeners 10 years before I became one. And partly because she invited me to the Christmas parties, and I started meeting Master Gardeners and find out they're great people. And anything you can do to be around these great people that are Master Gardeners, it's a good thing. But additionally, they weren't really there for gardening. They were there for education about gardening. And I'm all about education. I thought that's a great mission for the community. And so that's what drove me to become involved. Master Gardeners are trained volunteers with the love of gardening and personal experiences, but they're using research-based material that comes from the University of Tennessee. So this is not your grandma's idea of what you should be doing with vinegar, none of that. The vinegar might be right, but what we're presenting is research-based. Our goal is to increase the availability of good research-based information in the community and improve the life of people in our community. To be certified, we have a 14-week training program, plus 40 hours volunteer service in Hamilton County Master Gardener projects, and an additional 8 hours of continuing education. So Master Gardeners, as you go through the training, you're getting a good foundation in scientific gardening principles. Every year, anybody wearing the green badge to remain, I forgot to wear my green badge, requires 25 years of additional volunteer service and an additional 8 hours of continuing education. We also provide training and help in the community. You'll see us at different places. You'll see us at the Tennessee Aquarium in the Butterfly Garden. You may find us at the zoo. What favorite projects do you all participate in? Greg?
Native plants.
Native plants. Michelle, have you found a favorite yet? Michelle is one of our interns this year, and she's just about finished.
Yeah, we have like 3 weeks left. I like to be hands-on. Neil's like hands in the dirt.
Yeah.
So we'll see what I.
Good.
I love native plants. I love any kind of garden I can
A lot of people start with Crabtree Gardens as one of our most popular projects, reflection gardens. What do you do, Danielle?
I'm an insect team lead right now.
Yeah.
So we can meet once a month and talk about bugs.
How about you, Shirley? What's your favorite?
Fescue.
Fescue. Okay.
Salt.
Yeah.
Luxurious.
Okay.
I love that answer right there.
All right. Now, you'll find Master Gardeners at different places. Most third Saturdays of the month, we have a seminar at the Ag Center, and you can find out about that. I'll tell you how in a minute. We have the beginner newcomer gardening class every year. We have the Master Your Garden Expo. Oh, that's this. The annual garden tour is a fun thing. They'll find a handful of gardens relatively close together, and you're invited to go and see what people are doing, get ideas from their yard, talk to the people who actually grew the gardens. Those aren't necessarily master gardeners. Those are yards the master gardeners have gone around and says, that's an interesting example. Would you mind participating this year? That's a fun event. We have a fall garden festival at the Ag Center in October, and you'll find us many places, farmers markets and other events where we will be sharing information. And you can find all about Master Gardeners at mghc.org. And additionally, you can find everything that I've talked about today and more at uthort.com. And you can download the mobile weed manual for the iPhone, iPhone only as far as I know. But that's what the logo looks like. And you'll notice how much did I talk about fertilizers today? Not much. I'm not licensed. And in Master Gardeners, there's a liability that goes with talking about fertilizers if you're not licensed. So we don't talk too much about that. But we will direct you to the information. And that's what you want. So you can find garden-related answers and advice a couple different ways. You can send an email to the MGHC hotline at gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 423-209-8569. Leave your name, your phone number, best time to reach you, and what your question is. And now we are to the question and answer period. So what questions do you all have? I see a question, sir.
Where do you get your compost? Do you make the compost? Or do you, as a brand that you purchase from Home Depot, Lowe's?
You've asked a great question, a deep and rich question. So the person that was just in this classroom before, did you happen to hear Robbie's class?
No.
Okay. So she actually raises worms and uses the worm castings as well as some other things and makes her own compost. My wife will scavenge vegetables from restaurants sometimes. In fact, Robbie actually started this process and started with a couple restaurants on Highway 153 and said, if I come every night and I bring you buckets, will you put your leftovers from the romaine lettuce that you use for a salad and the cauliflower stems and all that stuff, will you put that in a bucket, leave it by the back door, I'll pick it up at night and leave you a fresh bucket in the morning. And so she started collecting material like that. And she frequently travels or has some other reason why she can't do that. So she'll point to other master gardeners and says, you want a week? And so my wife will say, yeah, I'll take a week, and that'll fill up her compost bin. And so many master gardeners and many gardeners in general will create their own compost. But there are other great sources, nurseries around, and there's one specific one that a lot of master gardeners know about in Fort Oglethorpe. And does anybody know the name of it? Because I can never remember the name. Ask somebody with a green badge where the good compost is available. It's called Black Gold, and I can't remember the name of the nursery that sells it down there. But that's what seems to be a favorite locally.
So you can get it like in a truckload?
Yes.
dump it in the
Yeah.
truck?
Yep. Good question. What other questions?
I have a question.
Michelle.
Thinking about watering and runoff and timing, like, do you have a preferred system of watering your lawns? Device?
It depends a lot on what your goals are and what kind of lawn you want, and what size and what your schedule is. So some people use a drag sprinkler. I was raised in California, and people in California have a hose and one of those sprinklers, oscillating sprinklers, goes back and forth, and they'll move that a couple times during the course of a day for watering day. But they're horrible at leaving the water to run off that and into the sidewalk and into the gutters. A more efficient way is to put in an irrigation system underground, and then you can set that on a timer, and you know how long it's going to take to get an inch of water on the lawn. And I should mention that it's not in this seminar, but if you want to know how long you have to run the sprinklers to get an inch, a can, like a leftover tuna can, Just set it out there, turn the sprinkler on, and wait until it hits the 1 inch mark. And if that took 43 minutes, then you know 43 minutes of watering will give you an inch of water on the lawn. So that's a practical way to do it if you've got an automated sprinkler system. Otherwise, some people do it with a hose, and some people just allow our rain to take care of it. It's a little risky. If you look at the charts, we get about an inch a week all through the year. The problem is Mother Nature doesn't know what an average means. And so we'll get it 3 inches, and then we'll go 3 months with no rain. And so it's very likely that you may, if you're going to use that approach, you'll wind up doing supplementing, especially during the hot and dry seasons. Yep. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, we have the drag in place kind of. We try to let Mother Nature take care of it, but when it starts to look really sad, we'll use the sprinkler. But I never thought about running it, pausing, letting it soak in, running it again. Like instead of trying to get it all in,
Yeah.
go.
Yep. Yeah. Do it all one day if you can,
Okay.
and get an inch on there. Yes, Caleb.
But here we are, so like you say, we hear weeks now, no rain.
Right.
We're dying for some rain. And most of my lawns that I maintain do not have an irrigation system installed. We've got some areas that are pretty rough. We actually have not done our first round of aeration and overseeding and fertilization, all that. We look forward to getting into that this fall. But as of now, I've been told that it is appropriate in the springtime to do some touch-up seeding and some, kind of scratching some areas and just trying to get some growth in those areas. Now, without having an irrigation system, is that something that is going to be frowned upon?
No, it's not frowned about, but it's going to be an extra challenge. As you know, when you're germinating new grass from seeds, it has to be kept moist. Now, top dressing will help that, but you've got to spend some time watering out there while that's germinating and getting established. And so if we've got one of those wonderful springs where you get a rain every week, this is not hard because now you're only supplementing a little bit. But then you hit a dry patch like this, you're out there working to keep it going. But you've invested something in there, you're going to do what it takes to keep it going. You bet. Other questions? Yes, sir.
I think some of us are just limited in what we can do, what we have time to do. Like we've got 3 acres and I've got about 8 lawns in separate places. We have rocks, that's really good because it's not gonna overflow.
Right.
I try to take care of the backyard because that's what we look at.
Yeah.
Aerate it and put some water on it, and it never overflows, never ever, which is good because it would overflow towards the house anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have irrigation, but a lot of broadleaf and a lot of rocks.
Yes. So what's the question?
How can I combat that?
Okay.
Broadleaf and rock.
Okay, so there's a couple different approaches. There's more than a couple, but I'm going to mention a couple. One of them is to use chemicals to help control the broadleaf, especially something like a pre-emergent or early on in the process to be able to keep them from establishing. And you're going to use these according to the directions, and probably at the beginning of the growing season because that's when they're going to get started. As the grass leaves come up more, a little later into the season, they start shading that ground, and that reduces the germination of weeds even if they're there, even if the seeds are there. So that's one way. The other way is to really focus on developing your turf with strength, doing the watering and the mowing in such a way that it drives the roots deeper and your plants get stronger. Because the stronger your grass, the stronger your turf is, the less likely you're going to have problems with weeds. And so that's a big factor in being able to control that. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Other questions? Yes, sir.
What about sod? When is a good time to plant it, or is it a good route to go with?
I've got to dig to see if that was covered as far as timing of sod, and I'm not sure. But I know who to ask, and that's whoever you're buying your sod from. They are an expert in that area with that particular breed of variety of grass that you're sodding. And so check with them and see if there's a better time or a worse time. I'll tell you off the top of my head, if you're using for like one of the cool seasons grass sod, I wouldn't plant it during the summer because that heat is just going to be torture on it. And likewise, if you're going to plant a warm season grass, you're probably not going to put it in December where it's got to face January and February cool temperatures to try to survive. You want to set it up for as little stress as possible as it gets established. Michelle?
I've heard mixed opinions on incorporating clover into lawns.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you have some.
Yes.
Is there a particular variety that
No,
you recommend?
yeah, whatever the birds brought in is what we have,
Okay,
and it's perfect.
okay.
Master gardeners are probably split on a couple little things, and it's not divisive, it's just different opinions. Some master gardeners really love the more natural approach. In fact, we splintered off a group called the Wild Ones, and they are focused on Tennessee natives. And then there's the other side of the world, and they grow things that aren't necessarily native, but they're pretty or have great benefit. And you'll find both of that in master gardeners. And I said that because I was trying to answer a question, and now I don't remember what your question was.
What particular variety of clover works best?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. I would send in a question to the hotline and say, what's the best type of clover for my area? Haley's going to be answering those questions, and she's a wealth of knowledge. Yep. Anything else? I think we're about time where she wants to pass out some something, so we'll give it back to Danielle. Thank you.